sleep in heavenly peace. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Starting 1999 with a countdown to the millennium, Pam Rhodes presents next week's Songs of Praise at 5:20. Antiques collectors are getting younger. Meet the next generation on the Roadshow in a moment on BBC One.
The BBC profiles the early life of the Queen Mother.
She was a sort of top girl.
She was probably descended from Scottish warriors.
Everybody was in love with her. At first, she was not attracted by the idea of royalty.
I think they made a wonderful pair.
I believe she was always known as the Smiling Duchess.
She would look blissful.
In Love with Elizabeth, tonight at 7 o'clock on BBC One.
This is BBC One. Having trouble, sir?
Oh dear, looks like I'm going to be rather late for the roadshow.
Hello, are you in trouble?
Yes, why? Do you think you could help?
I don't think so, but I know a man who can, so if you jump in, we'll just rush
that's
off.
very kind of you, thank you. I think I've seen her somewhere before. Not the sort of day to be left out in the cold.
No, you're lucky it's not raining.
Hello and welcome to the Heritage Motor Centre at Gaydon in Warwickshire, surrounded by vehicles that represent really the whole history of motoring. We're here for a special edition of the Antiques Roadshow featuring the younger generation of collectors. So we have young people and their families from all over the Midlands. And I'm delighted to say I'm also joined this year by Truda Mostu from the BBC television programme Vets in Practice.
To see you.
A warm welcome, Truda.
Thank you very much. I'm just so excited about being here. It's such a lovely centre and so many nice cars.
Yeah.
Have you seen any cars you like?
Well, there's one of which I'm particularly fond because it was the first car I ever had, and it was a Mini.
Yeah.
And there's one just over there. And it's strange how, with your first car, you still remember the registration number. And
Yeah.
it was UJY974, my first ever car. I bought it in 1963, I think.
Oh, it's amazing. So you're going to take it for a ride later then?
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I've got with me today, my mum kindly sent me this little doll that I used to see when I was a little girl. It used
Your
to belong
mum
to my
from Norway?
From Norway, that's right. It came all the way from Norway and used to belong to my grandma.
She has no clothes on.
She has no clothes on. I don't
Very
know what happened to
Norwegian.
don't know what happened to her dress.
Well, I'm sure Bunny would love to see that.
Yes.
And a little later, Truda and I will be setting the questions in this year's competition, which features some wonderful prizes. We also have, joining us for this special programme, another guest, Quentin Wilson from Top Gear. He'll be giving us the history of one of the most renowned of British cars, the one I had myself, the Mini. But first, let's meet some of our young collectors and see what they're showing our experts.
I've been collecting 10 years now, since I was 4. I was given this one, which was my first one, Christmas.
Excellent. So exactly what does a transformer do? It goes from a vehicle
or an insect or something in everyday life to a robot.
And now what's the oldest one that's here?
The oldest one is that one.
Brilliant. Let's have a look at that. Oh, you transform it. I can't remember how to do it.
Right, okay.
So that was a tank.
It was a tank.
And it's going to transform into a robot, which is... Now, robots were like one of the biggest collectibles in the 1950s. People absolutely loved tin plate robots. What was very clever about these toys is it's taking a normal toy, like a tank that Dinky and Corgi made, and saying, well, hang on, we can make 2 toys here in one. So what is that now?
It's actually a robot now.
That's brilliant. Now this one's actually made by Bandai,
yeah.
which is a Japanese company. They actually started in 1950, and most people are familiar from Bandai from tin toys. But like the best companies, they said, well, hang on a moment, there are new markets here, and they've made this, and this is what, 1983, this one?
Yeah, that's
so that's
right,
actually that's getting quite old. And what does this one do?
This one transforms into a gun, okay?
Brilliant. Well, again, that's exactly the same concept of taking something that's a fairly ordinary looking toy and transforming it into. Now that one's made by Hasbro.
Yep.
Hasbro, very famous for making G.I. Joe. You probably know Action Man? You played with those?
Yeah.
Well, Hasbro now remake Action Man. That's what they're famous for. But they're a huge toy company, and there it is. Absolutely brilliant. So, do you still collect these today?
Yeah.
Where do you get them?
I go to car boot sales, although then there's not very many of them around now.
Well, which ones have you bought at car boot sales here?
All the ones that aren't boxed. So that one, that one, that one, that one. We bought from car boot sales too.
How much was that one?
That was £4.
£4 for that one.
Yeah.
So second hand, you can actually buy these cheaper than they were in the shops. But it's not just the fact that these are cheaper second hand. Some of them are hugely valuable from the 70s and the 80s, especially when the TV show came along. That made them even more popular. I mean, have you actually joined the Collectors Club?
I haven't joined the Collectors Club. I've been surfing on the net about it though.
Yeah?
Found a lot of information on that. Yeah.
What sort of stuff? Where's that? In stuff in England or in America, Japan?
All over the place.
But I mean, I've heard people paying £200 or £300 for some of the rare Transformer stuff. I mean, it really is a market in itself, and I think that in 10, 15 years' time, all the big auction houses will be getting into it, and that's when the values will start to go. So, yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, and it's a fantastic collection, but cheap to do as well. Brilliant. Well done.
Thank you.
My dad actually started the collection, and when I was born, I was to either be called Bonzo, which is what my dad also collects, or Felix, and from there I just took it on.
So Felix the Cat started as a comic figure, and I think this is the oldest, because I think this is about 1925, probably by a British maker, possibly Dean's Rag Book. And at some point, perhaps some child has pulled the arms from behind the back so that it looks as though he's walking, but actually he's meant to be going along with his hands behind his back, isn't he? And I see this, which is a, what was this, a bomb core?
That was bomb diffuser squad. And the idea of Felix was that it helped people, it helped diffuse the bombs.
So this was their mascot?
Yeah, sort of.
In America?
Yeah.
And which is your favourite?
My favourite is probably this one, because it's made out of silk and it's just an embroidery.
And it's one of the few where he's not smiling.
Yeah.
This is very interesting because it's all back to front and upside down. It's a transfer.
Yeah.
And I think by the sort of muted colours, it would have had reds in it.
Yeah.
Which have probably been faded by the sun.
Yeah.
But it's very nice to have them because they're almost all of them are different. I think you've just got two that are the same. And I think it's a lovely animal to collect. But this is something that I've had in sales for the last sort of 15, 20 years, and they were making really quite hefty money about 10 years ago, and then suddenly one made a lot of money. So as what usually happens, a lot came on the market, so they went down again. But if this were to come into an auction, he's a great character, he's all in good condition, and you probably paid quite a lot for him, didn't you?
Yeah, I think he was about £150.
Well, I certainly think he's worth double that. So you've done very well there, and thank you very much for bringing your collection in.
Okay.
Loads of Beanos, loads of dandies. Who collects the Beano?
I do.
You collect the Beano. I can see you've got the Dennis and Gnasher on your sweater there, and you collect...
I collect dandies.
You collect dandies. Now tell me, what are your favourite characters?
I like Desperate Dan and Corky the Cat.
You like Desperate Dan and Corky?
I like James the Menace and all the Bash Street Kids.
That's very good. Well, look, you've amassed all these yourself. Where do you collect them from?
We got some from Car Beats House and a couple from the Book Fest.
Roughly, what do you have to pay for them?
About £1. Paid got some for 5p.
Well, that's very good. I mean, they are very affordable, aren't they? Do you know the story about D.C. Thompson? who started these. D.C. Thompson was a printing firm, and they started in the late 19th century with newspapers. And then, as they went into the 20th century, they came along with the idea of comics. And so by the time they got to the mid-1930s, they were looking for something new. And this was about the time of Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse and all those sort of people. And they came up with the idea in 1937 of the Dandy. And the Dandy book came out and was a tremendous success. And then within 6 months, they issued another one called the Beano. And that one eclipsed even the Dandy. It was just absolutely amazing. In fact, today, 5 copies of the Beano sell to 1 copy of the Dandy, which is quite extraordinary when you think about it, but that's millions and millions of copies. In fact, they are the most collected comics of all time, really, so you're in good company. Now, the ones that we want to look for are the early ones. Now, you've got a wonderful early one here. This is Stuart's Beano book. This is a 1941 with big Ego on the front there. Now, that is going to be very rare. Now, the problems with it, I have to say, and this is common for all comics, is condition. Now, you look at that spine, that's not terribly good, but at least there's a bit of it there. Now, that in fine condition would be worth sort of £400 or £500, but yours is not in good condition, so I think probably more like £100 or something like that. What did you pay for it?
We paid £10 yeah.
£10?
Yeah.
Where on earth did you find it for £10? A car boot sale?
It's in Wales.
There's an antique shop, and they had lots of things, and there was a stack of comics, so we got the oldest one that we could see.
I think that's very good. Now, let me tell you, if you go into an antique shop or a car boot sale or anything like that, and you find number 1 of the Beano or number 1 of the Dandy, that's the comics on their own. We're talking about somewhere around £2,500 just for the comic.
Comic?
Just for the comic on its own, because they are so rare. Now, what is this? What is this here? Stuart, you're going to show me.
It's my drawing, so I've got from the
This is your effort at doing a comic strip.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. You're going to be a comic strip drawer when you grow up?
Hope so.
Well, I think that's wonderful. Well, thank you very much. This is a tremendous collection. You've obviously got a lot of enthusiasm for it. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. We used to have a little dress on, and she sent it to me naked.
Did she have a reason for sending it to you
I
naked?
don't know what happened.
It's a sweet little doll. It's not a Norwegian doll, it's actually a German doll, but they used to send these to all the European countries all over.
Really?
Naked, and then and then the country would dress it in maybe a Norwegian outfit.
Oh, I
the
see.
dress?
Oh, that's probably what he had on.
It's probably worth around sort of £100.
Yeah.
And it's about circa 1900, something like that.
Oh, right. Oh, that's really interesting.
Well, it's a very pretty Victorian ring. What's the story?
Well, it was passed down to me from my grandmother, but it sort of doesn't really fit me very well. So.
Well, I think you've got a tiny little ruby in the middle of the flower. The flower is set with real pearls. What I like about it, the reason it's so feminine, if we turn it upside down, at the back of the cluster, there's a tiny little locket back compartment that you would use to keep maybe a tiny lock of hair. So I think it's so charming. And of course, what's excellent is the condition. I think if it was sold in an auction, it would probably make around about £150 to £200. Not that you're ever going to wear it, but it's a beautiful thing.
Are you a fisherman?
I do go fishing occasionally with Dad on down near where we live.
Right, and do you use these reels then?
No.
Where do they come from?
Never. They're all my granddads except my grandpa's, except for that one which Dad picked up at a boot fair.
So we've got fishing reels, and then what about these whales?
I think Dad got that at Kempton Park or somewhere like that.
And you like it, do you?
Yeah, I do like it.
It's great fun. Now these two things are both to do with whales, aren't they?
Yeah.
What do you know about that?
Well, it's a whale's tooth. That's about it.
With a penguin on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got 3 things really. Now the fishing reels, people collect them. This is a mid-Victorian one. This is probably 1860s and is probably worth about £80, £100, made by a Scottish company. This one by a company called Farlow's, one of the best makers of reels. Very nice little reel. Same sort of date, slightly later, and about £60. This one is much less, but it's quite fun because you can use it on anything. If you had an old washing pole, you could strap that on and go fishing, couldn't you?
Yeah.
So if you were on a desert island, you'd be all right if you had that with you. You'd
Yes.
still be able to catch fish. I think they're wonderful things. Now this is a thing called, have you ever heard the word scrimshaw?
No.
Scrimshaw means carvings of whale teeth and other ivory by fishermen who were hunting for whales. And when they were resting on their ships after hunting or before they actually caught the whales, they used to carve the teeth. And sometimes they cut in patterns, sometimes they make patterns like this. This is presumably a penguin carved in relief on it. And this might be as old as the 1840s, it could be 150 years old. Are you surprised by that?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing, it's very primitive, but this is a real collector's piece. I'm going to tell you a collector might pay £300 or £400 for that.
Really?
Yep, it's a very rare thing, and penguins are extremely unusual to find on it. Now what about the whale itself? What about that? I know that's a nice
yeah,
thing.
I like that.
I like that very much. Now this is probably the same story. Again, it's a Victorian piece. It could be the 1840s, the 1860s. It's much, much older than it looks. And this is probably a primitive carving of a whale from one of those whaling ships. And again, a collector, if that is the right age, would pay a surprising amount of money for that. I think, again, it would be about £200 for this, because anything to do with whaling is so popular. You obviously got the start of a very good collection here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, not being a technical man, I obviously need some help, and I can think of no one better to advise me, Quentin, than you. So, what's my problem?
Your problem, Hugh, was your main HT lead, getting a bit pensionable, past its first flush of youth. So my advice would be to get yourself something more modern, more cutting edge, more revolutionary. What you need, Hugh, is the Mini. Why? Because the Mini is one of the most brilliant car designs ever. They say that all the most successful cars have faces, and just look at that one. The Mini is fun, fast, accommodating, simple, brilliant, roomy. It is an excellent little car. This is the greatest car of the 20th century. And of course, the Mini spawned all sorts of offshoots, the wackiest of which has to be the Mini Moke. Now, this was originally intended as a military vehicle. It was stripped bare of all junk, all paraphernalia, and was light enough and robust enough to be dropped by helicopter. But the Moke's real natural habitat wasn't the battlefield, it was Carnaby Street. In the 60s, no self-respecting rock star would be seen out without his Moke.
Well, now, Quentin, if I had been lucky enough to have owned this, the first ever Mini, what would it be worth today?
Well, this is a very, very special car because it was the first one off the production line. It was literally hand-built, and it featured in all BMC's press material, all their films. If this was sold at an auction, a Japanese collector would probably pay as much as £30,000 for this car.
Really? And the original price, I mean, the sort of price I paid for my first Mini was under £500.
£537.
How I wish I kept my Mini.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
A very interesting collection of English royal commemoratives, either commemorating the coronations or an anniversary or King Edward the Seventh. And you've got King George the Fifth and Queen Mary, which are very interesting. These are terribly exciting ones. These are made by Royal Worcester, as you probably know, and they were going to be an edition of 250, but the King died and the whole thing was lost, and they only made, I think, around about 70 something like that, wasn't it? Now, these are usually marked and numbered, number 7, so this is a very early one. That's very exciting because I think number 1, 2 and 3 went to the King and Queen. So, I mean, you got almost as soon as the King and Queen got them. But they're very exciting pieces. How did you come by those?
Well, my dad and I were going to a Meissen auction, and on our way out, I saw that out of the corner of my eye, and we went over to have a look at it, and the auction was during school, so I couldn't go. So I sent instructions with my dad to tell him what to bid up to, and he got them for me.
Jolly well done. This is quite an interesting little figure, this King George, because I knew the painter who did the actual painting of it, and her original first one showed the king with silvery white hair. And when that went up to the palace, the palace objected. They said they had to make him look much darker and younger, you see, so now he's got dark hair, which is great. I suppose these, you know, ought to be sort of £500 or so, the pair of them. A very, very fine pair of figures, very rare. And you run on then to coronation pieces of the present Queen.
Yeah.
These are super. That's modelled by Revillius, who was a tremendous modeller. And this is Dame Lord Knight, which I think is one of the most exciting coronation mugs ever made. That's a tremendous piece. They can still be found quite comparatively cheaply. I don't know what you pay for these.
For that, paid, it was about £100. And that was about the same, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, well, that's pretty reasonable. I wouldn't be surprised if they went for £150 to £200 very, very shortly. So they're very collectible objects, and you've done jolly well, I think, in amassing these. And I hope you get Queen Victoria's coronation, but it's very, very difficult to get. Get it before someone else does, won't you? Congratulations. And all the best with the collection.
Thanks.
They're all Jaguars, because I like Jaguars, because I live near the Browns Lane factory, where they make proper Jaguars in Coventry.
In Coventry?
Yeah.
How many Jaguars do you think you've got in total?
I've got about 80, 85, something like that.
And they're all different?
Yeah, I've got 3 sets that I've got 2 of, but apart from that, they're all different. Because this one here, I've got the original, which is this one, and I've got another original, which is this one, and I've got another reproduction and another reproduction, which I got that by mistake, so because I forget how many of what I've got sometimes.
So those are the original ones that were made when the XK120 came out?
Yeah, so this is a original one. I haven't got the replica of that. That's a D-type Jaguar, so that's nice.
That's a real classic British racing car, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always fancied the E-type myself, but that's a nice toy, isn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
I
tell me
don't play
about
with them though. This is it's new, but it's very detailed. You can see the engine and the boot and that, they all open up. It's a nice one, and I've got an old model of that from when the E-Type came out, which is here. It's not very detailed.
What's interesting is when they actually produced the cars at the time of manufacture of the E-Type, this one, as you said, the detail is not great, is it? I mean, it's a very basic toy, whereas today you get examples such as this, where everything opens, the detail of the engine is absolutely superb. And out of the whole of your collection, which is your favourite piece?
Probably this one, which is the XJ220. This is what I'm going to have when I'm a bit older, my car.
What, the actual car?
Yeah, the real car. And this one here, this one's probably the most expensive because it's spot on. They don't make cars anymore, they went bust. And it's quite rare. And I got it free off my grandma because it used to be my dad's toy, which he used to play with when he was little. And I took it to a man I know who knows a lot about Jaguars, and he said it was worth £200. So
200?
Yeah, so I did quite well there.
Even though it's not in terribly good condition, is it? Had it been in mint condition in its original box, it would have been worth twice as much. So this is the car you're going to have when you get to 17?
When I win the lottery.
And how much for the full-size car would it cost you today?
About 250,000.
Well, I wish I could say that your collection was worth 250,000. Do you know how much you spent on it so far?
About £400.
Well, for £400, I'm sure one can see a good profit on that already. By the time you're 17, it could be worth several times that. I mean, maybe £2,000 or £3,000. It's a fantastic collection, and I'm sure you're going to be enjoying collecting in the future.
Okay.
So to our competition, which this year is based on the history of motoring as reflected in this fine motor centre at Gaydon. 100 years of the story of the motor car. Let me tell you about the prizes. This is the first prize. It's a PlayStation which comes with several extras, including one of the best racing games around. The winner and each of 4 runners-up will also receive one of these limited edition models. They were produced in 1989 to mark the 30th anniversary of the Mini, and each one comes with its own certificate of authenticity. The winner and runners-up also receive the A to Z of Antiques Hunting and this, our new book, to mark 21 years of the Antiques Roadshow. Well, now to the questions. The first one based on vehicles of this vintage. Now, in 1896, the speed limit for road locomotives, as they were called, not motor cars, was just 4 miles an hour. But in that year, the speed limit was increased. So the question is, what was the new speed limit set in 1896? Was it A, 12 miles an hour, B, 20 miles an hour, or C, 40 miles an hour?
The first automatic three-coloured traffic lights were first installed at a set of crossroads in Wolverhampton. Unlike these traffic lights, they were suspended across the road by cables. They remained in use up until 1968, which is actually my year of birth. So the question is, when was the first three-coloured traffic lights first installed? Was it A, 1927, B, 1933, or C, 1948?
So to our third question, which is about the highway code, of which this is an early example. It's packed with information, in particular about hand signals. Now, in the days before automatic indicators, the only way you could inform fellow motorists about what you were doing was by using a hand signal. Imagine, for instance, turning left. You could hardly lean out of the left-hand window, so from the driver's side, you'd use a signal like this. Well, that's all in here, but the question is, when was the first highway code published? Was it A, in 1919, B, in 1931, or C, in 1945?
These two pieces of glass are called cat's eyes. They were invented by a man called Percy Shaw, who got the idea when the headlights of his car were reflected in the cat's eye. And obviously, as a vet, I know that cats do have a reflective layer at the back of the eyes, just like these have. So, the question is, when were the first cat's eyes introduced? Was it A, 1925, B, 1934, or was it C, 1946?
So there we are. More details about how to enter the competition, plus a repeat of those questions, if you missed them the first time, at the end of the programme. But now, back to our experts.
Wherever did you get this marvellous collection?
Well, I inherited it off my great aunt, and I've added to it ever since.
Well, that's very nice. And how many pieces out of this collection are yours now?
About 25, I think.
Right. And which is your most favourite piece?
This one. It looks Japanese. It's very large, which was I thought was quite unusual.
Yes, but more of a paper knife than anything else with the rounded end to it. But probably tortoiseshell, and it's just been gilt and decorated in the Japanese style. I mean, it could have come from the East, actually. And what goes against it is the bits of chipping on it in terms of the value. How much did you pay for this one?
I think it was £10 with a button hook and several other things.
Oh, so it was part of a multiple lot?
Yes.
But really you got your eye on the paper knife?
Yes.
Well, what I love about the collection is the sheer variety, really. You've got a jolly nice Tunbridge ware little paper knife there, which is from Tunbridge Wells, where you get all these tiny little squares of wood that are cut and veneered in these exotic patterns. Now, that's a real collector's item, and I think a Tunbridge collector would probably pay £80 to £120 or £100 to £150 for this single paper knife. This is a really wacky one here with an ivory blade. It's probably come from Austria or from Germany, a bit of souvenir wear. And originally it would have had a piece of goat skin covering the whole of the handle. And isn't that charming? It's got a cloven hoof, but with a shoe on it too. How many have you got altogether then?
95.
Well, if you took 95 and averaged them perhaps at maybe £30 each, then you should probably be insuring for around about £3,000.
It's not.
It's quite a lot, isn't it? Anyway, keep collecting, that's the answer.
Thank you.
My parents used to look around antique shops, and I used to get very bored with this, which is quite understandable, really. And from the age of 8, I decided I wanted to have a collection of my own, and I decided I'd like to collect cards, old cards. I mostly collect the greetings cards and postcards.
Tell me about some of your favourite ones. Which ones particularly appeal to you here?
Well, this one was my first card I ever bought. It's not exactly very early, I don't think. but it's rather nice.
No, I mean, this one's probably 1930, 1940. Regarding the age overall, I mean, I should think they start from around about 1895 and go on to anything up to the 1950s.
Yes.
Coupled with that, the thing that does strike me is you've got so many different types of printing and manufacture of cards. So you've got the early German printed ones, such as this Christmas card, which is rather beautiful, again around the turn of the century. Then we've got a World War I silk. And from there we go on to the plastic cards from a little bit later. Again, this would have been amongst the first plastic materials, so when it would have arrived on the doormat, it would have been quite an exceptional thing. What do you think of these yourself?
Well, I think that one's rather grotesque. You wouldn't exactly get a card today looking like that.
No, quite. I mean, it's one of the nice things, isn't it, to have such a broad range of years. You can see just how techniques and tastes have developed.
Do you think that the condition of the cards could deteriorate in the way I'm keeping them, or do you think it's all right?
I don't think so. I mean, whereabouts are you keeping them? I can see you've got a large box full there, but I assume they're not in the cellar or in the attic.
No, I keep them in my bedroom in a chest, but they're never in direct light.
That's fine. I mean, I think it's important to have easy access to them, to enjoy them.
How much would you think my whole collection would be worth?
Difficult to say, but I would say between 150 and 200 pounds. But what you've brought today is really lovely. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
This is extraordinary. You bring a block of wood into the book queue. You've got to tell me, there must be a story behind this.
Well, there is, and it's quite a strange one. Well, you know Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland?
I know him very well, yes.
He taught mathematics at Christchurch in
Oxford, yes.
And he used to tell the stories under a tree to Alice.
And all her sisters.
And all the sisters,
yep.
Yeah. And my uncle, my great uncle, was the porter there. And when they cut this tree down, he got
So he got a chunk of it.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
Isn't that
tremendous?
Fantastic?
It's gorgeous. It's a piece of boxwood, and very dense and very hard. Normally they use it for wood engraving. Where do you keep it?
By the fire.
Oh, for heaven's sake! No, this is too bad.
That is very risky, you know. Yeah. Yes.
Now look, what you need to do, there's no markings on it or anything like that at all. You need to put a plaque on it, a brass plaque. Now with a provenance like that, such an extraordinary thing, I can quite see making £500. Somebody would buy something like that.
So it would be an expensive log to put on the fire.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
My great-grandmother gave it to my mother in her will.
Do you know anything about how it's made and what it's made of? Have you ever thought about it?
Not really, no.
Right, okay, because it's an interesting little example. It's Swiss, and it dates from, I think we can probably establish exactly the date if we look at the bottom. Now, along the bottom here, you've got some marks, and they are hallmarks, but these particular ones are import marks. So when things were made in Switzerland and brought into England, they had to have a mark. It's changed a bit nowadays. We have agreements between the different countries, but at that time, so the little marks here, I need to put my glasses on here. You've actually got an import mark for London and a little letter T. And if we look in the book, you're going to see that the letter T is 1914. Okay? Right. And what we have here, it's made out of silver enameled. Now the way it's done is, you see that extraordinary sort of iridescent changing pattern on the back. That is done, first of all, the silver panels were engine turned, a machine engraved that pattern on the surface, and then they covered it with blue translucent enamel, put into a fire. It's glass basically, and fired off with glass, and finally they put on what are called pions, and these are little tiny pieces of gold. And the way you put those on, I've seen that they still do it in some places. You need a one-hair paintbrush, right, and you sort of put it on the end of your tongue, tip of your tongue, lick it, and you pick these up. I mean, 1 million of those little pieces would occupy about the size of a postage stamp. They're incredibly light and tiny. They're stamped out of gold, and you place them on the surface to make the pattern. Every time you've got a cold, you sneeze, and then poof, it's gone, just like dust. You place them all the way around, and then you put it back into the oven for the fire, and fire it again
with a glaze, and they're fixed into the surface. There's wonderful workmanship. And these, on the sides here, you've got small enamel panels. These are painted like a picture, but in enamels, onto a white background. And then the dial, finally, the lovely detail, is, do you recognise what that's made out of?
Is it opal?
Mother of pearl.
Mother of pearl.
Yeah, oyster shells, basically, mother of pearl. Again, painted. And it's a very typical sort of early 20th century clock. Wonderful quality. And with its original case. And the key. Well, of course, the value's not important, is it, really? Would you like to have an idea?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, it isn't important. You should keep it. It's a wonderful thing, but £2,000?
£2,000. Golly.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Well, Doctor Who started on the BBC in 1963, but when did you start collecting?
I didn't actually start collecting until Nicholas was born.
So it's a joint collection,
yeah,
all this
yes,
stuff.
yes.
So what is the first piece of Doctor Who stuff you had that's here? What was the first one you bought?
It's probably the 1995 yearbook. John Pertwee is the third Doctor, third reincarnation, and he's not one of my favourites.
So who's your favourite Doctor then?
My favourite is Sylvester McCoy, and
what was he, the fifth?
No, he's the seventh.
Seventh Doctor,
And I've actually got a birthday card from Sylvester McCoy.
Actually from
Sylvester
him?
McCoy, yes.
Well, actually signed to Thomas?
Yep.
Fantastic. What's your favourite character, actually, in Doctor Who?
Favourite character, Daleks.
Because when Doctor Who first started, it was like, not going to be any monsters in it. This is not a monster show.
Well, one of the people actually said no BEMs, which are bug-eyed monsters.
I've read that quote myself.
And,
It's a good one, that.
Of course, Daleks are bug-eyed monsters.
And Terry Nation actually came up with the idea, and it was the thing that absolutely set the whole series on fire. What's this game here? Because this is old, isn't it? A lot of this stuff is sort of slightly newer.
Well,
what about this one?
I went to basically my first Doctor Who sci-fi toy fair. And I managed to buy this for about £30.
And it's actually got lots of Daleks in it, hasn't it?
Well, yes, it's got these lovely little sweet Daleks.
Because, I mean, these sell for, £3 or £4 each.
Well,
so, I mean,
yes,
£30 for the game is absolutely brilliant. What about this? What's this book here?
Well, this book, I don't know if you've heard of a convention called Panopticon. And it's a convention which goes around the country. I went to it in Coventry. I actually go to a Doctor Who group, and we went with them. And a lot of the stars from Doctor Who were there. People like Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy.
And they've signed these?
They've actually got... I bought this for £1.50 and they signed it.
That's absolutely...
That's one thing that I really like.
I mean, that's what collecting is about for me.
Well,
it's not so much about the values. It's looking at stuff, getting the stars if you can to sign it, and then you've got a collection that actually means something to you. And who are we being overlooked at here? Tom Baker.
This is Tom Baker, yes.
The longest running Doctor Who, wasn't he? I mean, that was the Doctor Who when I was young. He was absolute hero.
Yeah.
Where did he come from?
Well, often you've seen, I don't know if you've seen in like places like Waterstones and other shops.
In bookshops, yeah.
In bookshops, where you can actually get promotional cardboard cutouts.
Yep, standees.
Standees, yes. And so what you do is you just go into the shop, and Nicholas often does this. Yeah. He just goes up to the counter and says, do you think we could, reserve this? And lucky with Doctor Who, not many people, are so interested because they don't know much about him.
It's brilliant. I mean, a James Bond standee from the 1980s went to auction for £200 recently.
Wow.
It's only 10 years old.
Yeah.
So something like that, because you couldn't buy it, it's going to be collectible. But there's one thing that's sort of sticking out a mile here is this fellow here. What's the connection?
Do you want to say about that?
Well, basically we have all this and some more stuff at home in a cabinet. Then when people from Dad's work come round, it's just a donation and they put it in here.
Fantastic. It's a brilliant collection. Keep going at it. And you're raising money for charity. Fantastic. Well done.
Thank you very much.
So tell me, what is it about these wonderful pictures that you like best?
I like it how the detail just blends in with the whole picture and the colours and the peasants, the people there.
They really are there, aren't they? Yes, no, it is fantastic.
And it's like one perspective picture, it's going straight into the picture.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. Well, obviously you know that this is Mount Vesuvius.
Yes.
And what's really nice is that you've got here a picture of Vesuvius smoking away, and over here, we've got a view of Pompeii, which was the Roman town that was ruined as a result of the eruption from Vesuvius. So you've got the juxtaposition of the two things. Here we have a modern 1785 city, and there you've got Pompeii.
I've been learning about Pompeii at school.
Oh, right.
At the moment.
Well, what's particularly nice here is that these were painted in 1785 by a chap called Saverio della Gatta, and they would have been painted for a wealthy tourist. Not a tourist in the way that you and I might go on a package holiday, but tourists, probably the aristocrats, who'd made their way to Italy to see the wonders of Vesuvius and Pompeii. And actually, in the scene here, you've got a very rich, elegant couple being shown the sights by the local tourist guide, and there you have the aristocrat probably wanting to see themselves in the picture. So when they came back to England, they had obviously not got a camera to take photos of it. They've got these wonderful paintings.
Yes.
Now, the pictures are painted in a technique called gouache, which is a sort of paint that sits on the surface. It's not like watercolour, which sinks in. Have you ever painted in watercolour?
A bit, yeah.
It's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it really
It's
is extremely difficult. And here, this artist is fantastically skilled. Now, of course, it'd be wonderful to know how they ended up here. How did they come into your family?
Well, my great-grandfather, he actually found them in his home.
Right.
And they had a frame around them, but they were falling to bits. So my father took them out of their frames and just kept them safely.
Right. Well, it's a good thing you kept them safely. They're very fragile, and obviously they've got a few little scratches on them. Nothing that can't be sorted out. Very difficult to sort out, but it can be. And obviously you've got a bit of a nasty mark there.
That was from the fire, from where the smoke had led up, and the cracks down the
And the
paintings.
backing board.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Right. Now, do you think these are valuable pictures?
I do, because they're so well done, and it's so early. It's
Yeah.
ages ago.
It is a long time ago. Now, how much do you think they're worth?
What do you think?
200 each.
200 each.
No way.
How much?
1,000 each.
More.
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 A great deal.
1,500.
Well, I think you're in for a bit of a shock, and I hope you're going to be able to take them home carefully in the bus, because they're actually worth about £20,000.
What each?
No, for the pair.
Oh my God.
They're worth about £10,000
That's a
each.
lot of money.
So you must be very, very careful.
Oh, and I put them on my foot this morning.
So do be very careful.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm glad I like them.
So, a fabulous find from the next generation, and that almost brings us to the end of today's programme, but not before we give you more details of our competition and indeed recap on the questions. They were: question 1, what was the new speed limit introduced in 1896? Was it A, 12 miles an hour, B, 20 miles an hour, or C, 40 miles an hour?
Question 2. In which year were the first automatic three-colour traffic lights installed? Was it A, 1927, B, 1933, or C, 1948?
Question 3, when was the Highway Code first published? Was it A, 1919, B, 1931, or C, 1945?
Question 4. In which year were cat's eyes introduced? Was it A, 1925, B, 1934, or C, 1946?
Put your answers on a postcard, please, together with your name, age and address, and send it to Antiques Roadshow, The Next Generation, P.O. Box 229, Bristol, BS 997JN. And if you have access to the internet, you'll find an entry form at www.bbc.co.uk/antiques. Please remember, your entries must be in by Friday, the 8th of January. Only one entry per person, and you must be under the age of 18.
And the winner and the 4 runners-ups will be announced on the Children's BBC on Sunday the 10th of January, so the best of luck to you.
Truda, have you enjoyed it?
I have enjoyed it so much. It's such a nice change from my searching.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for asking me.
We've enjoyed it. And I hope very much that you'll join us for another Antiques Roadshow next week when we're in Gloucestershire. So until then, from Truda, the rest of the crew and myself, goodbye.
Goodbye!
And next week's programme is at the later time of 6:25. A unique portrait in a moment tonight on BBC One, the early life of the Queen Mother, in love with Elizabeth. Antiques Roadshow experts can now answer your questions online at this BBC website.
In the new year, the BBC launches its biggest ever health campaign.
There's a lot of empties in here, love.
Nothing a strong man like you can't handle.
It will give you sound advice on the hows and whys of getting into shape and show you how to eat well and get active.
What happened to that athletic man I once married?
What, you think I could improve on this?
The Fighting Fat, Fighting Fit campaign.
Of course not, darling.
On television, on radio, online, on the BBC from the 5th of January.
Right now, she's settled into a booth in the Rovers, and I'm going to try and scrounge a drink.
But will she be caught with her specs on or off? This Is Your Life, tonight at 8 on BBC One.
She's the nation's most famous grandmother. Now, through personal memories, photographs and letters, BBC One remembers the early life of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother.
Elizabeth Beslan was particularly pretty. She was a sort of top girl. She was the sort of girl everybody wanted to dance with, everybody wanted to meet. She was lovely.
She was an extraordinarily attractive young woman who would naturally have lots of chaps hoping to get to know her better.
She was wildly popular. I've talked to people who were young men in her circle, and they one and all agree everybody was in love with her.